So 22nd of January, welcome to Number of the Day. It's a nice one, actually, for all of us South Africans. 16 Rand. Well, not quite, but we're getting there, Francis Herd. And before we talk about 16 Rand to the overseas currencies, what can you buy for 16 Rand? I was thinking.
Almost $1.
Almost.
and that's why we're talking about it, because the Rand is getting stronger against the dollar. It's very exciting. And it hit 16 Rand 13 to the day. So you would have to fork out 13
Sure.
cents. I don't know where you'd get that.
Well, what do you do with 13 cents?
Exactly.
Really?
So that would be the shrapnel, we say, at the bottom of your purse. So earlier you could buy $1 for 16 Rand 13, but the bets are on, Gareth, that it's going to hit 16 Rand to the dollar, which is relatively strong. So let me put it into context. This is a more than 3.5-year high. So we haven't been at these levels since August 2022 or thereabouts. Over the past year, the Rand has strengthened by 12%. So what does it mean? I don't know. If you go and buy a coffee in Europe somewhere, maybe it won't cost 100 Rand anymore, maybe 90 or something.
So this might be for those who may be going overseas. They're saving themselves a few cents here or there. But I'll tell you what, when you've ever booked an overseas trip, you know it does make a difference. What I'm wondering is why? And this is where you're going to have to explain the dollar versus the Rand, which one's stronger, which one's weaker, and why.
So this is the dollar-Rand exchange rate. And often we move simply in the opposite direction of the dollar. So yesterday, Trump was talking about Greenland. In the run-up to yesterday, there were huge fears around that looming tariff war between NATO allies, between EU countries and the United States. Now, the dollar does different things. It's confusing because sometimes when investors are scared, they're in the dollar. Sometimes they're out of the dollar. In the run-up to that, they were out of the dollar and in the Rand. So the Rand was already strengthening. Yesterday, Trump says, okay, he's indicated that there are no plans to annex Greenland. There's not going to be a military fight. He's talking about a deal. So we now see a relief rally, it's called, on the markets. All the markets are back up. Everybody's feeling happy. And the dollar strengthened, but the Rand is still strengthening. So now for other reasons, it's not just because it's in contradiction to the dollar. It's because when investors are feeling happier, they go for riskier assets, and we are seen as a very attractive but riskier asset. You know, high risk, high returns. So investors are back in South Africa. And it's just good news. It means the sentiment is good. And we've been saying that for the last year.
And it comes down to sentiment. It does. I'm wondering if we talk about those, the shrapnel at the bottom of your purse that you referred to earlier. For South Africans, what does this mean really? Are we really saving money on, I'm trying to imagine, I'm guessing fuel, maybe the knock-on effect from that is groceries. The knock-on effect, will that be then what? The cost of living might come down, or is this too short term to look at it like that?
Well, it's been a trend for a long time, and it's very positive, mainly because of what you said, the oil price. So we import oil. We are an oil importing country. We import Brent crude oil, and then that becomes the petrol at the pumps. So as soon as the Rand is stronger, it gives us more buying power to buy things on the global market. And luckily, oil hasn't been too bad either. So generally, this is just really good news. And there are these psychological levels. The next would be 16 Rand to the dollar. And a lot of the banks are saying this is really possible. And for me, Gareth, just to end off, I think it also shows that people are not believing US President Donald Trump, who again said there's a genocide in South Africa in Davos this week. Obviously, if investors believed that, we wouldn't be seeing the kind of interest in South Africa in government bonds, across stocks and things like that.
It might be the boy that cried wolf one too many times. Perhaps a discussion for another day where you're starting to wonder how seriously are global markets taking these continuous, almost weekly Trump tariff threats. And it's maybe beginning to lose its effect that I think he was hoping it would have.
So that's an interesting one because many would say this is his playbook, right? You play hard, you threaten, and then you pull back and there's some sort of deal. So maybe in the end, the US will get some sort of deal, but many say, well, they could have just opened their bases anyway and said to NATO, let's make the Arctic safer. But maybe he will be able to say, you see, because I played hard, we got a nice deal. Maybe the deal could have been there all the way along anyway. And having said that, I think really this time people were wondering, how far would he go? So the uncertainty is still there. The uncertainty is still there around when next will the president of the US go after a country. But right now, we are doing well in the midst of the turmoil and the U-turn on Greenland, a complete change in rhetoric from the US president. The rand was stronger before and the rand still stronger afterwards. And maybe we'll hit 16 rand to the dollar soon.